What's up, guys? This is Keith Kelfus with the Untrapped podcast, and we have a special show for you today. Really excited. We have Molly from Jobber, and Jobber is a software I've been using in my business for over 3 years now. I love it. I actually couldn't imagine running my business without it because everything you can need to run a service business, and it's made our lives a lot easier. And I actually met Molly from Jobber. I almost said Jolly from Jobber. I'm so sorry. Probably like 4 years ago at the Equip Expo, and she's very professional. She's very knowledgeable. And also we want to talk about the Jobber Summit coming up March 1st here in 2023. It's going to be awesome. It's Jobber Professional Development Day, now called the Jobber Summit, where you can get access to tons of free tools and interviews. It's like a whole live virtual event, and it's totally free. You can read about that in the show notes or go to keithkelfus.com/resources. It'll be the first thing that you see when you go there, and you can sign up for free. And so what's going on, Molly?
Keith, nice to see you. I haven't seen you since we met up at Equip Expo back in October. And yeah, first met Keith, like you said, probably 4 years ago. I think at the rally is probably when we first talked. Want me to introduce myself and a little bit of what I do at Jobber?
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, hey everybody, my name's Molly. I've worked at Jobber for 6 years. So it's been a while that I've got to work with this really great community. My functional title, as I like to say, this is true, is Director of Brand Marketing and Communications. But what I actually think makes more sense is Head of Community. And that's because I work with a team that is kind of focused on two things. One, community initiatives to share knowledge and learnings throughout home service. I gotta say, as someone on the outside looking in, home service is this really awesome community, and honestly, green industry, landscaping, lawn care are really ahead of the curve where there's no gatekeeping. Everybody's sharing knowledge with each other and sharing what's worked, what didn't work for them in the past. So that's really great. And we work on initiatives like Jobber Summit, the Jobber Entrepreneurship Group on Facebook, where we get people talking to each other. We work with ambassadors like Keith on his content, events that we partner on. And then we also go to trade shows. And obviously you've heard us talk about Equip Expo, where we do fun stuff with our ambassadors as well. So there's that side that I work on where we're going to the community saying, what do you need? How can we connect you with each other? And really supporting the community. And then there's the side of bringing awareness to home service. So the things that home service businesses do can sometimes seem invisible. Like as long as everything's going right, you don't really notice that your home and office are running really smoothly and you're really comfortable and everything. But as soon as something breaks, that's when you call someone to help you and you're in a panic, and these amazing people who are listening come to our aid. And so like the industry is so humble. So what we want to do is bring a spotlight to that industry. So we work with different entrepreneurs in our community to get them in the media. We hear their great stories and we pitch it to media, get them in the news. And then we also hear that, for example, when it comes to grants and funding, a lot of home service businesses didn't feel like they fit the qualifications of what it would take to get a grant for a small business. So that's why we put together Jobber grants specifically for home services. And we've given away 55 grants totaling $300,000. So kind of both of those sides of home service is what I get to work on. And it's really fun. And then I get to work with people like Keith on a long-term basis because we really are here for the long haul to grow this community.
That's awesome. Yeah, you got that down pat. That's good. That shows that you're a true practitioner.
I have a communications background.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, communication is everything, and organizational communication. I've been learning that a lot one day because I'm obsessed with personal development. And we're going to talk about some of that stuff here, and you have some tips and things to talk about. And for those of you listening, what up, though? Personal development junkies. I watched this video on YouTube once. Like I got down this path of communication. Like one day it hit me because one of my best friends, he's an NLP certified master hypnotherapist, life coach, and he's also a private mastery coach, and he's changed my life. And he said the quality of your communication is the quality of your response. I was like, what? He talks to me in things that sound like almost like he's talking in a riddle. I go, huh? Yeah. I'm like, how come I don't understand that? I think I'm a smart guy, but you're talking riddles to me. He goes, the quality of your communication is the quality of your response. And he says it's because your unconscious mind is inductive and the conscious mind is reductive. So you're trying to take and tie some anchor to what I'm saying. But if you open up, you can just receive it. So what he means is if you want to know how good you are communicating, look at the haptic feedback of the quality of the response you're getting from your customer, from your friend, from your spouse, from your client. The quality of your communication is the quality of your response. So then I got down this path of like, oh my God, communication and the articulation of your communication. How well do you define the space in which you communicate? How well do you put rails up on your messaging and say, we stand for this, which means we don't stand for this, and then not being lukewarm. And then I watch a series of videos on YouTube for free called, you can dive into organizational communication. And there's these amazing videos, very educational. And even they go into like to the military and then like massive companies. And they talk about like the biggest companies in the world are actually data companies that master communication. And then of course, the products and services are highly important, but they're actually secondhand to the quality of the communication. And so like, I think you guys at Jobber have achieved this huge omnipresence, and this communication model is doing very well. So,
yeah, that's interesting. So in other words, you're saying like, you can say everything you want to say, but what are people saying back to you? What did they think they heard will be the proof of if you're truly communicating properly. Like, are they repeating what you've said you stand for?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And paying attention.
That's interesting.
But I'm interviewing you. I'm so used to talking. I'm going to shut up and ask you questions.
No. And I think that's really interesting too about like, you can have a great product, you can have a great small business, but if you can't cut through the noise of everything that your potential customers hearing about all day, if you don't speak to what they actually care about, then you're not going to go anywhere. So that's really interesting too. I mean, I could talk about this all day. I'm a communications nerd. So you're speaking my language.
Absolutely. So is that before we went live here, you were talking about personal development, and then you said you wanted to dive into that. Let's get right into it.
Yeah, I would. So we designed Jobber Summit. This is how I like to describe it. Our events team who design it, they're really cutthroat about who they bring on. They interview all the potential speakers. They talk to them about what they want to talk about, because at the end of the day, if we're making an event specific for really busy small business owners, then we'll know that we succeeded if they come back next year. So everybody gets one chance. Like, we get one chance, someone shows up to this event, and if they don't find value, then they're not going to come back. So we're very respectful and aware of how home service business owners don't have a ton of time. With that in mind, I really wanted to talk about with you, because you're so into personal and professional development. What we hear a lot is people want to do professional development. They want to do personal development. But when you have a to-do list of 100 things, it's usually going to get deprioritized. It's something a lot of people want to do, but they don't know how to incorporate it into their lives when there are so many other demands. So I would love to hear from you. How do you make sure you make time for this? How do you prioritize it? What does your professional development routine look like?
I like to answer in stories, because stories are hypnotic, and parables tell stories that actually make your subconscious mind get something. And then what happens is, even if you don't know how to articulate or understand the answer, like some epiphanies, because that's what we're really looking for, are epiphanies. We want to compress time and have what's called like an epiphany bridge, where we have these synapses in our brain that make us go, oh my God, you get this aha, and then it changes everything. It's like identifying the one domino that knocks over all the other dominoes. And sometimes we get these life-changing epiphanies. Like, we hear a very specific piece of information that's calibrated at the perfect time. And then what it does is, it's the one domino that connects all these other dots. And you wake up in your business, like if you're landscape business, and it's the one thing that helps you overcome the fears. And then before you know it, you're off the truck, like for real. And I've had things like this. And the really big ahas that are just groundbreaking, they move you to a new level of consciousness, might happen 4 to 5 times in an entire 90-year lifetime. And I'm obsessed with how do you increase those ahas. So what people do, I'm talking about the antithesis of personal development, is mindlessly scrolling on social media. When people are scrolling through Facebook Reels or TikTok or Instagram, we've all done that. I think it's because we're actually looking for an epiphany or something that triggers something that goes, oh my God, so we don't have to look on social media anymore. And so it's first cutting the fat and identifying the things that are holding you back from personal development. If your business is already full, you got a family, you got a service business, maybe you're close to your creator and you're barely getting 6 hours of sleep a night or whatever, it goes to desire, knowing what you want. Because if you don't know where you want to go and you just are into personal development, that was me. I was getting into like learning about hypnosis, NLP. Oh my God. I'm reading my 477th book right now on Kindle. It's called Work the System by Sam Carpenter, of how he identified all the systems and processes in order to make his business work like a well-oiled machine. But you can also read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. It'll change your life. So I'm
reading that right now.
Yeah, it's an amazing book that's not only practical and actionable, but it's tactical, and it has bite-sized nuggets that you can implement day by day. So if you realize like you have the macro perspective of you finally figure out where you want to go because you can't hit a target you don't have. First is getting clarity. So you can't get clarity sometimes until you first go. My wife and I, we have an aquarium with 6 fish and we do a water change every Wednesday. I won't get too deep in that, but it's funny how like when you clean the bottom of the tank and all this muck comes up from the bottom and it first has to be all like changed and cleaned and new filters. So I believe you have to get clear about the muck in your life and the places you're wasting time. And maybe you're binging out, eating too much fast food and falling asleep, or you have toxic habits. Identify all that stuff and then go to work on that stuff to get that stuff out of the way. Once you let go of the heavy buckets of concrete or the sandbags or the things holding you down or the toxic relationship that you spend too much time, or, once you can get rid of that, it's like, boom, it's like holding a beach ball underwater, and it gets so hard to do because it takes so much might. And then you finally let go and the thing just pops up to the top and just starts floating on top of the water. Why? Because that's its natural state. So what I mean by that is now you can free up all this mental and emotional bandwidth before you can actually start to receive more new information. You might have to get rid of old stuff. So once you get rid of old stuff, this might take months. Like you might have to physically go through your house and purge out old clothes and old socks and underwear and like, what is all this? And just like go get some contractor bags and fill up and purge out. Maybe your landscape trailer is filled with crap. I don't know. But for me, that's what I had to do. Tons of that. My wife has helped me tremendously with that because I was such a pack rat because I grew up so poor. And once we started getting rid of a lot of the crud and like leveling up my hours and my identity, I started realizing like, whoa, I'm not that same scared guy who was 24 anymore. I've grown. So it's okay to level up. So now as you level up and you get clear about where you want to go, now you can stop getting all this random information on social media. And you could start to narrow in and identify in the specific stuff that's where you're at right now. And I think that maybe getting off social media altogether and detoxing and getting into some good books like Atomic Habits by James Clear or like Essentialism by Greg McKeown. I could talk about books all day. So instead of binging on social media till you fall asleep with your phone, get rid of your phone and get a good book. Like I actually bought a Kindle during Christmas because it was on special. It was like $71 for a $150 Kindle. And I'm like, well, I don't need it because I can read Kindle on my phone or a paperback book. But I was like, I'm not trying to be too personal, but like if I lay in bed next to my wife at night and then lights are off, I'm sure she doesn't want like the lights on because I want to read. So I'm like, but a Kindle, I can lay in bed quietly and read till I fall asleep. So I bought the Kindle and I downloaded books and now it's like the best thing ever. And then audiobooks. You can read hundreds of audiobooks while you're working. If you're behind a weed whip or a lawnmower or in a truck or something, I mean, get a subscription to audible.com immediately and just start downloading the books that will take your life to the whole next level. And then you'll start to make decisions like, do I want to get on the phone with this person who's going to talk about a bunch of negative crap for 30 minutes? Or do I want to listen to this audiobook that's going to teach me how to take my business to the next level? So, and then it becomes an obsession. It becomes fun, right? Yeah, audiobooks and reading and books. I could even talk more. Online courses. I believe that you could still, if you know where to look, you can find a lot of really good information for free, a lot of general information on YouTube and on Instagram. But if you really want to learn the good stuff, you got to pay now. Imagine if someone sat you in front of a television and they just kept changing the channels, right? But what if you invested $500 or $1,000 or even $5,000 in a high level advanced training program or online course that's specific knowledge about how to grow your business or fix your relationships, or maybe you flew out to an immersive 4-day live event. So paying for coaching, like I'm part of a private coaching group right now. It's $5,000 to get in. I just invested another $1,500. I'm about to invest $7,500 into a private branding coach and consultant to go through all my branding and take my entire branding to the next level. And what used to sound terrifying to me, my friend Joshua Latimer said to me, he's like, what's the most amount of money you've ever invested in like a coaching program? I'm like, like $2,000. He goes, that's the problem. You need to invest like 5 or 10 or 20 grand and then really put something on the line, because then what it does is your belief in yourself goes up. When you get rid of all this weird outward focus on everybody else and you start to get quiet and go within, and then you reinvest and place your bets on yourself and your education. Some guys guys and girls are landscapers too. We're mostly landscapers here. Like want to get that new F-350 truck or buy a whole bunch of equipment they might not even need yet. What if you take a little bit of that money and you just use it to buy yourself the time to focus on your education so then you can really build a strong foundation. So I just have a bunch of stuff there, but I'm obsessed with this topic.
Yeah,
What do you
clearly.
think?
I mean, yeah, a lot of that resonated with me. I have like a list of things I would love to respond with. When you were talking about epiphanies, you made me pick up my phone because I keep notes in my notes app in term like when I hear different things or I'm reading a book or whatever. And I have this quote, discipline is choosing between what you want now and what you want most. And I feel like that's what you were kind of communicating in the start, if I may put some words into your mouth of like, what do you actually want? And then
Yes.
clear the clutter, physical or time wise, to get there.
Wait, say
So
the second thing
that
again.
discipline is choosing between what you want now and what you want most.
Mm-hmm. And the next part?
That was
Oh,
it.
oh, you said something about clearing clutter.
Oh, and then I said, yeah, that you were talking about figuring out what you actually want and then clearing the physical and mental clutter that you might have built up to let you actually focus on that.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's one thing that came to mind for me. Also, thinking of those epiphanies too, the reason that I'm reading Atomic Habits is because I heard him say that consistency is better than intensity. And I am the type of person that I like intensity. I'm like, oh, I'll do this for a week. I'll do this for a month. I'll go really, really hard. Well, that's not going to help me develop lifelong habits. So that really spoke to me when you said that we're looking for those epiphanies, because I write them down and they make me read a book. In terms of your Kindle, I have a Kobo. It's essentially the same thing, an e-reader. And I feel like that speaks to how are you making it more convenient for you to consume information? If Keith likes to read at nighttime, then a Kobo is good for him because it's backlit. It lets him read without disturbing his wife. Audiobooks is something that I do. I prefer when it comes to business book. I do fiction too. I'd rather listen to it while I'm commuting, while I'm working, like as long as I don't have to split my attention, while I'm cleaning, while I'm cooking. I can be doing something I'm already doing. And then I listen to audiobooks on 1.5, sometimes 2 speed. I have an Audible subscription. You can also get a library card and you get the app on your phone and you're downloading audiobooks for free. So that is one that I would really encourage people to try if they haven't, is audiobooks. And then there was another thing that you said that stood out to me. Oh, the accountability, not only the quality of the content. So, you could read a book, listen to a podcast, come to an event like Jobber Summit, and you'll get hopefully really tangible information. But then the idea of, okay, I want to go deeper on this topic, or I want to go even better in this, and then investing it in a course or a coach. What that speaks to me about is accountability. I personally like setting up meetings to meet with people. So I have like an every 3-week meeting with a mentor. When I'm reading a book, I often like to find someone in my life or on my team to do a book club with so that I have to have notes ready to talk to them about it every couple of weeks. And I feel like, I don't know what you think, Keith, but spending money on something also makes you accountable for following through on it is kind of what that speaks to for me.
Stick around as Keith returns with more of the Untrapped podcast in just a moment. Hey, if you're looking for what is probably the greatest software ever to run your business on, go to getjobber.com/Keith. You can create proposals, invoices, collect payments, even track your entire business directly on the Jobber smartphone app. And if you want to get a totally free trial of Jobber right now, open your browser, type in getjobber.com/Keith, and if after the trial you decide you want to sign up with Keith's link, you'll automatically get 20% off your first 6 months. So what are you waiting for? Go to getjobber.com/Keith. The Untrapped podcast continues.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great feedback, everything that you just said. And also, I remember in the book Atomic Habits, he talks about setting up a reward structure. So like if you like to get your favorite Starbucks cafe mocha or something, well, you'll get it after you leave the gym. Or you can like bundle habits together. Like if you love listening to like jazz music, well, you got to listen to it while you do your workout or something like that. Or I mean, it talks about, you said consistency is more important than intensity. I love that too. So sometimes we have these epiphanies that trigger as my brother-in-law. He's awesome. He's a little bit older than me, my wife's brother. He invited me to do a 5-day fast right before Christmas, and we did it. I lasted 4 days.
Oh,
I think he lasted like 2.5 days, but I did 4 whole
good
days
for
without
you.
food. Really. Yeah, it was amazing. But then he also sent me a link to this. I don't know, what's the famous actor guy who plays Thor? He's like this super muscular guy and he does
Oh,
this thing.
Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah, so he sent me this link to
Yeah.
this trailer of how because he's like a superhero in real life and they put him through all these intense real life tests, like swimming in freezing water and hanging from helicopters and stuff. Is like, can he really do that? And it's really a thing about challenging. And for me as a man, I perceive it as core masculinity and challenge. So I just sit down and turn this thing on Disney Plus and I watched a few episodes and something had just triggered my core where just after watching a couple episodes about it, I've been working out doing cardio and working out ever since, but not for anybody else. Maybe like for my wife, but like because it makes me feel good and it gets rid of anxiety and I feel more balanced and stable. And then that combined, so the motivation, which is temporary, combined with like atomic habits, which is hopefully longer lasting habits. Because it's very important when we're talking about personal development because you have faith, family, finance, fiscal, fitness. So fitness is very important. So he said, like you said, consistency over intensity. Yeah. So I set these little tiny goals. Like I'm just going to do 20 push-ups, period. That's all I have to do today. And if I jog, I don't even jog, but I just have to power walk one time around the block. And it's like, so if you force yourself to do just a little tiny workout, but you got to do it. It's easy. Like you set the bar really low, like you said. So that worked. And that's how I was able to increase intensity very quickly within a 3-week period. And then I was doing it with the book. So I open up the Kindle and I'm like, I just got to read one page. Sometimes I only read 2 to 3 pages. Sometimes I get immersed and I can read for, half an hour, 45 minutes straight. And I'll read 7, 8, 9 pages. So I did this other test and I realized might be huge for people that are addicted to drink too much coffee and caffeine. I love coffee. I would drink like a half a cup in the morning, but there's times where my wife and I were brewing 3 to 4 pots a day. I'm drinking like 4, 5, 6 at 10 o'clock at night. We're drinking coffee. And,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. Then you're just running on coffee. And I was wondering why I couldn't sit down and read anything when I take an online course to try to increase my education. I couldn't focus. I'm like, do I have to go get like counseling and get on medicine? Am I severely ADHD? And then finally, I'm like, wait a second. I'm drinking all this coffee. I decreased my coffee intake by 90%. I went down to just a couple sips in the morning. And then I went like 4 whole days with no coffee at all. And I noticed I woke up in the morning very calm and relaxed, no anxiety, chilling. I was like, wait a second. This is where people can't focus. I'm reading on the Kindle. There's people that are visual, audio, and kinesthetic. So some people have to visually see something for it to really make sense. Other people, they don't have to see it or anything. Like they could just hear it and then it makes sense. Other people are kinesthetic and it has to feel right for them before they can move forward. And so if I'm listening to an audiobook, it's hard for me to really interpret the information because when people talk, it doesn't make sense to me. I have to see it and feel it more of like a tactical way. But when I read, I notice that if I read and I very calmly read and I visualize like I'm watching a full color 3D movie of everything I'm reading very slowly, the book comes to life and I have a full immersive experience that integrates and actually plays out in my actual behavior. So I notice when I drink coffee, so I wake up and I'll read the book. We're talking about personal development here. This is like the in-depth stuff it's the difference that makes a difference. I would read the book before drinking any coffee upon awaking, and I'm absorbing every single word and I'm fully immersed in the book. Then I went and made a cup of coffee and drank half a cup of coffee and said 5 minutes later, I go back to read and my eyes are all over the page. I can't read. I can't interpret it. I feel shaky. There becomes a disconnect. It's almost like a drug, like a disassociative experience. I was like, wait a second. This is the coffee that's causing this ADD. So I tried just a little bit of coffee and I still could not read. Without coffee, I can actually consume, interpret, and integrate information like times 10. But on coffee, I cannot. So I was like, oh my God, maybe coffee is good for getting up in the morning, get out the door and going and running landscape jobs and being all over the place. You got to get that extra.
Right.
But maybe if you're trying to sit down in a full immersive, relaxing, inductive experience where you want to upgrade your whole life and your whole business to the next level, something as simple as I don't know if people here do drugs. I hope not. But like, think about your sleeping habits and your patterns. Are you having insulin spikes and carbo crashes? Are you eating like Danishes and sugar and coffee with sugar for breakfast? And now you're all weirded out and ineffective. So I'm playing around and experimenting, because there's a saying, when the pain of staying the same, when the pain of changing is less painful than the pain of staying the same, you'll change. If you get in a painful enough place in your business where it's not growing or not going anywhere, you'll get to that point where you'll have a breakdown and start looking for other options because what you're doing isn't working anymore. So I think that's where I got numerous times. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that, to me, nobody's harder on themselves in my experience than entrepreneurs. So I feel like two things that resonate with me is like, what works for you. There is no one right way to consume information. There's no specific time of day that every single person learns best. So you have to find out what that is for you. Is it before you go to sleep? Is it in the morning before you drink coffee? That's on you to experiment and figure out. Like you hear some people that are like, I can do thinking work in the morning and then I do like action work in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that is for me. I know some things. I know I like to work out in the morning. I figured that out. And I like to read, like for myself, so like fiction and whatnot in the evening. So I figured out at least that much. I have more to figure out in terms of how to make my work day even more efficient. And the other thing that you said that made me think that resonated with me was, okay, we're too hard. Oh, this idea of an all or nothing mindset. I don't know if this speaks to you, but sometimes, because I am that intensity person and I'm trying to become the more consistency person, I can think, oh, if it didn't go perfectly, then I've already failed. Or if I don't finish by X date, then there's no point in trying. Whereas what I've tried to train myself is every day, or depending on if it's something I do multiple times a day, every time I do that thing again is a new time to do it the way I want to do it, is a new time to be better at it. And I feel like for people who are hard on themselves, and especially entrepreneurs, I imagine, you tell me, have you had those feelings of like all or nothing, or I'm doing it wrong? And that's not actually the reality.
Yeah, totally. And I think we all have in some aspects. And some people, I will never say his name, but I know an entrepreneur that I actually look up to a lot, and he owns multiple businesses. Dude's super intelligent, makes a lot of money too, and he's a great guy. Well, I was having an issue in my business that I was kind of like ashamed of, because I couldn't believe after all these years, I still cannot wrap my head around this simplistic thing. And I felt so dumb and embarrassed to say anything. And I was on the phone with one of my friends who's a business coach, who's friends with this other entrepreneur that I look up to that I just talked about. And I was going through like this thing, and I finally just spilled the beans. I'm like, dude, I feel so stupid and inadequate. I'm an idiot at this part of my business, and I don't get it. And it's driving me nuts. And he knows that I look up to that other entrepreneur. He goes, what I'm going to tell you is strictly between you and I. Like, you never repeat this. Did you know that other entrepreneur that you look up to has the same issue? He puts on a game face and he really is the real deal. But behind closed doors, he has the same issue, and he is a mess when it comes to that topic. And he just breaks down and he can't function, and he just has total anxiety around. And so I was like, oh my God, I'm not the only one. Like, so I get this type of, so the one sentence persuasion course by Blair Warren is saying people do anything for people who encourage their dreams, allay their fears, and help them throw rocks at their enemies. There's this whole thing, this psychology thing is like, I understand why my friend told me that, because he wanted to have like an epiphany bridge. All right. So I'm sorry, go back to the question, because I was like segueing into it.
Yeah. I was saying entrepreneurs are really hard on themselves. So there's this idea that you're doing it wrong, or if you do it, you could think that you're not doing it the way you're supposed to, or that you give up if you don't do it perfectly. That was kind of the idea that I had.
In the Millionaire Mind book by T Harv Eker, he talks about 80% go. So he talks about not being a perfectionist. He says, there's a saying I love. It's like, don't wait till you get good until you get going, and then you'll get good. Right. So if you try to be a perfectionist, and there's also studies like they would have, I think it was like a bunch of kids in art class, they would split up the class down the middle. One half of the class by the end of the month had to have like 20 art drawings done, 20 drawings each, which is kind of a lot. But the other side of the class was only allowed to do one drawing for the whole month. And so they split it up. You think that because the one side of the class did just one drawing, that it would become this magnificent masterpiece, and the other ones would make a bunch of crappy drawings. But the opposite was true. The side of the class that had to do 20 drawings, the drawings started out like kind of crappy. And I think that because they had practice and learned and gained confidence, they actually made a way higher percentage of a much nicer artistically cool drawings. And the other side of the class got like totally stuck in analysis paralysis. And so it's like something about humans is, so there's another thing, there's decisions that you make that you got to get clear on if you're a perfectionist and you're afraid of being, everything has to be perfect. There are decisions that you make are irreversible, right? If you go out and you sign a car note on a $70,000 truck, you can't just get out of that because you change your mind. You got to get very clear. If you go and install a $50,000 luxury outdoor living space, or you take on a huge commercial client, whatever you do in your business, but a bunch of the little stuff, don't be afraid, because if you mess it up, you can fix it. Once I finally realized, when I was totally flat broke in my business and I was scared, and I would hire an employee before I had a training system, and they would trim like 3 shrubs perfect on a customer's property. And then the 4th and 5th shrub, it would just go down, 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 and they'd destroy them and mutilate these shrubs. And like, I've had to replace shrubs, apologize to customers. My mind is blown. I feel dumb. But that's a fixable thing, right? It's not the end of the world. So at some point, you have to have trust and realize on a gradient that there is kind of a gray area, and it's not all or none, and that it's not going to be the end of the world. So you start to like take little risks, and then you get comfortable like building your risk tolerance muscle. Mm-hmm. And then you take a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, and then you draw it back. Then you assess. I just think as time goes on, you'll get to the point where you get better and better, but there's still going to be things that you're going to be a perfectionist on. I don't know. That's just what I learned so far. What do you think?
Yeah, that idea that we look up to people and we think that they're perfect. I like how we're trading epiphanies here, because that reminds me of another quote that I recently heard about how if you see someone doing something at that expert level at the 100th time they're doing it, you have to remember that they did have a first time that they did that thing and it did not go that well. That's how they became an expert. It's not that they woke up one day and they were just magically bestowed with that talent. So yeah, the people we look up to aren't perfect and they have totally screwed up, but they had the bravery, I think, in terms of what you're saying, that they've built that risk tolerance muscle to take that chance. But also, I feel like the mind, something that makes me think of as well is kind of how you can think of certain things that you're afraid of as immersion therapy. Like that it's going to be scary the first few times and then it's not going to be scary. I think one example that comes to mind for me is some people who might be listening might want to be putting themselves out there more on social media, either in terms of just representing their business or more so from like a mentorship perspective towards other businesses. So maybe to their customers, maybe to other businesses. And you might be scared thinking, does anyone want to hear what I have to say? Well, one, the answer is yes, because there's thousands of other people that you probably like, there's probably hundreds of people you follow and you hear what they have to say, and everyone's different perspective is interesting. Social media will, the algorithm, like the likes and engagement will tell you what people find most interesting. You have to post more than one to learn what people find interesting. And then immersion therapy, it's not going to be scary. You're going to start to not care so much. The 10th time you've posted, the 20th time, you'll care about the content, but you won't be scared to actually talk on camera, for example. So yeah, that's what that makes me think of is just,
wow,
it is
that's
scary.
Amazing. I'm listening to a book right now called The Body Keeps Score. It's an intense book. I would not recommend listening to it. I listened to it, I think like a year ago, and I was like, this is intense. I can't handle this. But I'm obsessed with personal development and psychosomatic illness and psychology and what makes people tick, what makes me tick, and traumas and micro traumas because of the obsession with success versus having these psycho-emotional blocks that are like a brick wall that you just can't get past it. All these people are just running past and like it's a brick wall for you. Well, what if you could take a deep breath and relax and put a door there with a hinge? What if you could walk through the door? I can't walk through the door, but could you just imagine yourself walking through the door? It's terrifying. Just no one's going to hurt you. It's like, just imagine. Now imagine that you've walked through the door. Now the wall is behind you. Now take a breath. Oh, you didn't die. Getting people through these micro traumas and these unconscious and conscious fears and anxieties, like somebody that's terrified to go in the water. Maybe they almost drowned when they were a kid, right? And if you could hold their hand and they're towing and it's okay. I believe that these are the things that help people finally have happy, holistic lives and happy family lives and facing stuff like that. So
yeah, no, that is that idea of like, that helps people have those happy lives. I also have this quote that I sometimes have in my head of like, why not me? If someone else can have the success that I want, if someone else can get a discount on their phone plan, honestly, that's where I put it into action most recently. Why not me? And I have to have this, I'm being vulnerable here. It took bravery for me to talk to my phone company and say, hey, I've been a customer for a long time. I would like a discount. And I had to hype myself up to do that. And for some people that'll resonate, and for some people they'll laugh because that's easy for them. But yeah, if other people are getting or having the success that you're interested in having, it is those tiny little baby steps that get you towards there yourself. You can get there too.
Totally true. Real quick, if you're watching on the Untrapped Podcast YouTube channel and you want to be part of the Jobber Summit free live event, March 1st, 2023, go to keithkalfas.com/resources. It'll be the first thing you see. keithkalfas.com/resources. Alex Rodriguez, A-Rod, the famous baseball player, and he's also a very successful entrepreneur. He's going to be there talking, and a bunch of other very successful business owners are going to be doing a deep dive. It's going to be like an all-day event with, I think, a morning and afternoon. You'll see that when you go to the page. You can't miss it.
Exactly. People wanted more times, so we're doing a morning event and an afternoon. So 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern, and then 6 to 10 p.m. Eastern. So you can come to both. You can switch between the two. Some people join from their trucks. And then you'll also get most of the talks emailed to you after, if you need to watch them after, as well as a PDF recap. I'm excited about the ERA talk. Our CEO, Sam Pillar, is going to be talking to him about what he's learned in business and teamwork and leadership and whatnot. So I think that'll be a really interesting conversation. And the chat at this event is very active. So if you enjoy this kind of stuff that Keith and I are talking about, you're basically going to meet thousands of other people who are interested in digging into this too, that you can continue these kind of conversations with.
It's going to be awesome. And I'll be there too. I'll see you guys there. Is there any more cool stuff you want to talk about? Professional and personal development?
I mean, we covered a lot. I feel like we could continue to. I will ask a question that was on my mind. What are your favorite books for business and then personal development?
Man, that's good. It's funny because just last year this spring I was finally able to read Ray Dalio's book, Principles. Like, he's the billionaire that Tony Robbins in the book Unshakable interviewed. It was mind-blowing. He just talked about the resiliency of being a problem solver. Another amazing business book is a 3-book trio by Gino Wickman. The first book is called Traction. If you're not ready to get punched in the gut, Traction, Rocket Fuel, and Get a Grip. Those 3 books are amazing. Other amazing business books that'll change your life are obviously all the Mike Michalowicz series, which are like The Pumpkin Plan, Profit First. I think it's called The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur. And then he has more new books about like The Wave. And there's another one came out. It's called something Get Different. Like, I've just downloaded that. Other amazing business books for sure that will change your life forever are all the Kiyosaki Rich Dad and Rich Dad Advisory series. Even like the ABCs of real estate makes you think in terms of like assets and building assets. Cash Flow Quadrant will change your life. I read it 3.5 times. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You have to read that. And then more business stuff. People always ask me, I'll say, what books do you read? I'm like, I've made a video going through. I have the best ones already
You're
listed
like
here.
a canned answer. Yeah.
Okay. All of Dan Sullivan's books, The Founder Strategic Coach, I'm reading right now, The Self-Managing Company. And he's talking about getting out of the day-to-day, pulling your hair out, putting out all the fires. And then that's how you can get to the point where you can become free. And then you make money. And then that allows you to work on your relationships, because it's a catch-22. It's the chicken and the egg. Like, how are you supposed to do all this stuff and work on your personal development? You have to get very intentional and very clear. The Automatic Customer by John Warrillow. I'll be reading that next. And then Perry Marshall has some interesting books like the 80-20 Rule and Detox, Declutter, Dominate. Your Next 5 Moves by Patrick Bet-David from Valuetainment. It's a lot of business wisdom in there. I can go on for hours. I just won't. And then The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. Oh my God, that book was amazing.
Oh, I have that book.
It's a
yeah,
great
it has like a brain on the cover, right? The
Yes.
white book with like a green cover. Yeah. Okay. That's on my bookshelf.
The Richest Man in Babylon. So it's these deep principles about money and being a good steward of your business and money. Books like that. So now I'm starting to pick up books on stewardship and nonprofit organizations and leadership and things like that. Obviously, all the John Maxwell books. So, and then books on just personal development alone. So All of Dr. Wayne Dyer's books are amazing. He's written like 43 books, and I'm going through them again. I've probably read 20 of them, and I've spent, in the fall time, it's very nostalgic. I dive into Dr. Wayne Dyer. I'm not even going to name off all his books, but I can see clearly now. That's not, if you're just getting introduced to him, probably the book Excuses Be Gone. Bro. And there's a spiritual solution for every problem. These are books that changed my life when I was literally in the depths of depression and my life sucked. Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. If you're going through some deep depression, all of Dr. Joe Dispenza's book, The Placebo Effect, and Dr. Joe Dispenza, Change Your Life, anything by Bruce Lipton. You can also get into Ram Dass. And then, I feel like
you reliving memories.
Yeah. Oh, one of the best books I ever read in my life. I'm a big fan of Robin Sharma, and he wrote a book called The Everyday Hero Manifesto. He's also the author of The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. The Everyday Hero Manifesto is a book about being a leader in your own life in very small ways. He talks about accountability at very high levels. And I feel like every single book is one little teeny, like a small puzzle piece that all reflects the major big picture. Also the Bible, like I'm reading Psalms right now in the Bible. It's so amazing. And talking about like the power of life and death in the tongue and what Jesus said to the people and how the Pharisees and the scribes and the religious people of the day would like use sophistry and casuistry to get him to put his foot in his mouth. But he would just say things that would decimate in a very lawful, trustful way. He would say things that would make them just like walk away. Jesus's wisdom was unmatched to anybody else in history. So yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good list. I'm really glad I asked that question. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You?
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking, oh my gosh, okay, my list is going to be as long as Keith's. In terms of professional development, I've been really interested in leadership books the last couple of years as my team has been growing. So I would say a few that stand out to me are a book called The Ride of a Lifetime by Bob Iger. He was the CEO of Disney. So he was there when they acquired Pixar and Marvel. And I really liked, he kind of almost does it as a sort of memoir. It kind of goes in order when he started at ABC and ended up at Disney. And I really liked the lessons that I learned in that book from him. Another one that stands out to me is called Leadership and Self-Deception. And that one is told in a narrative style. So it's told like a story, which is really interesting. And I call it the Don't Be an Asshole book, because essentially what it teaches you is that if you want to get to a specific outcome, and you can apply this to your life too, then what do you need to get there? How do you need to work with the people to get there? And so often our ego holds us back from saying or doing the things that actually make sense to get to the outcome we're looking for. Because we want to say, I told you so. Or we just want to feel like we were right, or we don't want to give away any ground. And if we put all of that to the side, we could get to where we want to get to and everyone can feel good about it. But instead, there's a tendency to want to like to just make yourself bigger in the situation than to actually get to the outcome. That one's huge for me. It's one that I want to read every couple of years because I want that lesson to be top of mind for me because it changed the way that I approached different situations at work and in my life. So those are two professional development books. Oh, one more, Multipliers. It's a really great book on coaching. One lesson I really like for Multipliers is when people are naturally great at things, they don't always know that not everybody is great at that same thing. So as a leader, whether you're someone's formal boss or just their peer or whatever, you can tell them, hey, you're really great at that. And they can now hone that skill intentionally. I'm actually doing a book club with my team, reading that one starting on Friday. So it'll be the third time I've read that one. And then in terms of personal development, like I kind of said, I take a lot of lessons from these books into my personal life, but I also have been reading a lot about mindfulness and by like Thich Nhat Hanh and whatnot, and about just strategies to be in the moment. And our anxieties can make us worried about what other people are thinking or where a situation might go. But what's actually happening? What's actually happening in the moment? What are your emotions making you do and making you, like the analogy is like, if there's a storm passing, a lot of us are in our heads, like at the top of a tree, just like going wild. Be the tree trunk. Let the storm pass and don't let the emotions wave you around like the crazy top of the tree. Like take a breather, let the storm and the emotions pass and then assess where you're at. I need a little bit of that in my life. As I've told you, I'm a pretty intense person. So that's what comes to mind for me. Thanks for asking.
That's powerful. Very powerful. I'm writing the names of these books down. I'll say them again. She said The Ride of a Lifetime. These are all on Audible, are they by chance? Or are they books?
Yeah, those two are definitely on Audible. That's how I read them.
Okay. Leadership.
All three. Yeah.
Okay. Leadership and Self-Deception.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other one is Multipliers. And the other one is something about mindfulness. What did you say?
I just like many books on mindfulness.
Okay.
So whether it's like the Dalai Lama or Thich Nhat Hanh.
Thich Nhat Hanh.
Yeah. Thich Nhat Hanh is probably how I should be saying it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I got that written down. Sweet. I'm going to check that out. Yeah. Sometimes we have to, well, hopefully not have to, but one time I think I was 2 years into my landscape business and I was so overwhelmed and I was trying to do everything myself and my prices were so low. I had this guy who worked for me, actually still works for me. I don't know why I had agreed to pick him up and drop him off for work every day, but it's pretty common in landscaping. Like people give each other rides. And I was stressed out. And then I had to sit in traffic all the way home and everything was falling apart in the business and at home. And it was a hot summer day and we're like pulling up to his house. And I just started open fist punching my steering wheel and screaming, I'm only one effing guy. I'm only one effing guy. And my eyes were filled. I just went in like a rage mode for like 10 seconds straight, hitting my steering wheel and screaming. And all of a sudden I got real quiet and I realized what I had just done. And I felt so ashamed of myself. And I looked at him and he was cool as a cucumber. I'm like, dude, I'm so sorry. I just did that. Like I instantly felt horrible because I don't ever like act out like that. It's just like boiled over like a teapot or something. And he's like, no, dude, I don't envy you at all. And then I was apologizing, dude, I'm so sorry for acting that way. But that experience was very insightful for me from a mindful perspective because I realized like, what are you allowing to let you get to that point? What it was sometimes when your worthiness feels low and you don't feel worthy and you have holes in your personal boundaries. Imagine if you have boundaries, like your personal boundaries, personally and professionally, your business and your life, and there's these holes, right? Whether if it's a person or a friend or a customer or a client is trying to push their agenda, or we call it like putting their turd on your plate. If there's a hole or your boundary is weak, you will say yes to things, yes, that you don't really want to do. And you don't know how to qualify opportunities yet because you don't have skills. And you feel like you have to say yes to everything in order to like make your business work, or you think everything's going to fall apart. You're thinking all or none, like we talked about earlier. And so I was saying yes to so many things. I was getting in over my head and I was so frustrated because I hadn't built the boundaries required in the structure in my consciousness, the structures yet in order to just run a basic little landscaping business. So yeah, that's where I really dove into more books and learning about stuff like that. And that's where like the books like Traction by Gino Wickman and books like that will teach you how to have more structure in your business so you can deal with the pressure more and things like that. So
yeah, process it rather than everything feeling like a one-off. You have a bit of a framework and a structure to create patterns to deal with things.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for this conversation, Keith.
Yay. Jobber Summit.
Yeah, Jobber Summit, everyone, March 1st. Register. I promise you will walk away with something that you can implement the next day or in the next week.
And it's totally free.
There's nothing to lose.
Go to keithkalfas.com/resources. I'm saying that because it's a verbal thing I can say on the podcast. It's a page I have where it's the resources and it's the first thing you see. Click on Jobber Summit and sign up and I'll see you there. Anything else? Molly from Jobber?
I think we covered everything. Thank you for that great conversation.
Yes, you're welcome. And thanks for being on the show. Hey, everybody, if you like the podcast, if you love it, we're on all platforms. If you're on Apple or Spotify, please go down and leave a well-worded review, an honest review, and it really helps boost the show and the ratings so we can get this message out to other people. I appreciate you. I'd like to meet you in person one day and give you a fist bump, shake your hand. I love meeting people at live events, and I hope you crush it in your business. I hope to see you at the Jobber Summit, and I really wish you all the best of success. I hope you overcome any personal turmoils or struggles or traumas or anything. This is the Untrapped podcast, and I just really love my greatest joy in doing this is watching other people succeed and watching their milestones. I've met people who are so afraid to go full-time in their business, and then they finally take the leap and they're terrified, and then within a year, they're like, 100 grand, 150, 180, 250. I've watched people just do tremendous things. And when you do take the leap, all these opportunities, the universe just comes in to support you like a net, and all these opportunities you didn't even conceive of just come rushing in. So I wish you the best and have a good day. Bye.